You've read 5011 articles and still you are no closer to finishing your literature review. You think that reading and more research is going to solve the problem, but friend, you've been doing the same thing and you're getting the same results. And you know what that's called? Insanity. Instead, what you need is a strategy for how you take those notes and translate it into written pages of a beautifully crafted literature review. In this video, I am going to explain to you why what you're doing is not working, and I'm going to give you a strategy that will help you write a literature review in 3 days or less. If that's of interest to you, keep on watching. First of all, I've helped over 300 students, just like you, write their literature reviews, many of them writing it in a week or less. How, you might ask, is because when you have a strategy, when you have a process that you can follow step by step, it is just so easy to put words on a page. But I first want to explain to you why what you're doing is not working out for you. Number one, you most likely do what I see a lot of students do, which is they go to their library or they go online and they just start downloading articles. Anything that is related to the topic, anything that may have the topic word in the title, you are downloading. Like, people tell me they have articles, like they have folders of like 70, 100 articles, because people tell you you want to include everything. But here's the thing. If you are reading 50, 60, 70 articles at a time, how can you possibly keep all of that information in your head? I know there are things like matrices and annotated bibliographies, but again, without having a proper strategy, how do you know if what you're reading is appropriate for your literature review, if you can even use it, or if it is even like good enough to be in your dissertation? Number two, most people that I see are reading and reading because they're avoiding writing, right? Because to write, you have to deal with all of your insecurities and the imposter syndrome and that voice that keeps telling you that what you're writing is not going to be good enough, and I don't know why you're doing that. And so it's much more comfortable to just read, because we know how to read, right? Like, we know how to read and take notes, and we know how to do a bibliography, and we know how to put things in Zotero, and so it just becomes more comfortable to read. But eventually you have to put words on a page, and you have to submit those words if you want to progress in your dissertation process. The other thing that I see, if students happen to put words on the page, most likely then they are summarizing. It's like a boring book report that they're writing, and they give it to their chair, they give it to somebody else to review, and that person is like, you just gave me a list of things, a list of summaries. Like, I might as well be reading an annotated bibliography. And you are confused because you're like, I followed exactly what you told me to do, which is I read the articles and I put the words on a page, and now you're telling me it's not good enough. And it brings me to like this fourth point I want to make. Synthesizing is completely different than summarizing. Synthesizing is where you take in a lot of information and then you tell us what your opinion or how you understand that information. It'll be as if I asked you, did Kendrick Lamar or did Drake win the beef? Right? You have probably listened to all the songs, and you've probably been a fan of them for a long time, and you would be able to tell me clearly who you thought won and the reasons of why. In the same way with your literature review, you have to be able to read the literature, synthesize it in your mind, which is another way of saying, based on all the things that you read, what is your opinion when it comes to this topic? It gets confusing because people will say, well, the literature review is not about your opinion. It is about the literature. Friend, everything is an opinion. All the shit is made up. Everything is made up. Every textbook, every article, every rule, every policy is made up. So will be your literature review. And just because we're making up things doesn't mean we're not basing it off of past research. Where people go wrong is that when they're telling you words like, you must be grounded in the literature, they're like, yes, we want to know what you think, but we also want to know that you are grounding it in something that other people have said, not that you're just making it up in your mind. But we'll get to that more later. And then this last piece of why reading isn't helping you to write words on a page is that you don't have any structure for your writing. I ask students often, tell me what your process is when you go to sit down to write. And most people will say, well, I will look over my notes, I'll read what I wrote last time, and then I'll try to put some sentences together. Do you know how much time you're wasting? So much. You cannot figure out what to write in your head and then hope and pray that it comes out on the page. Instead, I want to invite you to use writing as your primary tool of how you figure out what it is that you want to say, which is going to lead us to the scholar review routine. Before we get into the routine, here's what I want to say. If you are someone who's like, girl, I got to write this literature review and I needed to write it by last month, then I want to invite you to the Write Your Literature Review retreat. I am hosting a 3-day retreat in Atlanta, Georgia. You can either join me in person or you can do the virtual option. But in 3 days, you are going to leave this retreat with a full draft of your literature review. Yes, in 3 days, you're gonna have a full draft. Why? Because yes, friend, I've been doing this for over 8 years at this point, and I know I can help you. I've helped over 300 students do this, and friend, I can help you write a literature review. So when it comes to the scholar review routine, first, we always start off with writing. Why? Because friend, you've been reading. You've been reading for months. If I was to look at your notes, I was looking on your computer, you've been reading. Now we need to translate what you've been reading into words. And the best way to do that is to put the words on a page. But this takes me to my next point and something you have to make peace with. What I tell my students is that writing happens in stages. And writing something as large as a dissertation or as a literature review requires multiple drafts. There is no one, I don't care how long they've been writing, there is no one sitting down and writing one draft and it's perfect. Absolutely not. Clarity comes from action. So if you want to get clear on what it is that you're trying to say in this literature review, then friend, you have to start with writing. So we begin with free writing. You just dump out everything that you know about this topic onto the page. Once you have what I love to call a shitty draft, then it's where you start to craft that shitty draft into paragraphs and trying to get a sense of what was I trying to say here. This is where you're going to start to notice, oh, I talked about this thing, but I probably should talk about this other part. And oh, I said this one sentence, but maybe I need to flush it out. Now we're starting to make structure with it. And now you know exactly what literature you need to include because you are clear on what it is that you're trying to say. When you start with reading and then writing, you have so much in your mind that you don't know if what you read is even appropriate for the literature review. And you're trying to make a lot of puzzle pieces fit that don't go together. But when you begin this process with writing and you organize that and then you go to the literature, now we have more of a strategy of what we're looking for because you know that, oh, I made this point over here. I need to go and get the literature to justify that point. It makes your reading more efficient and it makes your writing more efficient. More efficiency means you get done faster. And then the final part, you need to spend more time editing. I tell students for every hour of writing, you need to go ahead and do 3 hours of editing. Why? Because y'all are over here writing all of these like summaries and run-on sentences, and then you give it to your chair, and then you got an attitude because they didn't give you feedback that was helpful, but you didn't give them a draft that they could actually read. Okay, I'm gonna tell it to you straight, friend. I'm telling you, I've been doing this over 8 years, and students make the same mistakes over and over, and it's because, let's think about this. When you were in your courses, right? Think about going into a class, the first day, you get a syllabus, and that syllabus tells you you're gonna read these assignments to write this paper. Also in that syllabus, if it's a good one, each writing assignment is very clear in terms of a rubric of what should be included, which readings assignments you should include in that writing assignment, right? The dissertation or your literature review is not coming with a syllabus. It's not coming with instructions. The expectation is you are creating a structure, but you are trying to apply how you will receive structure in your classes, those same strategies, you're trying to apply that to the literature review and the dissertation, and that doesn't work because they're two different processes. So when you are creating new knowledge, it's going to be important that you start with writing so that you can create the structure for yourself and then you go to the literature. If you're looking for more information, friend, I want you to join me for the Write Your Literature Review retreat. In 3 days, you're going to have a full draft of your literature review. I have helped countless students like Dr. Elizabeth Morgan write a literature review in 3 days. She wrote that literature review, defended it for her preliminary exams, passed it with flying colors, and now she's a whole ass doctor, and I want the same thing for you. So hit the link below and I will see you at the retreat.